Today, Go2 turns 47. This is almost known as the missing XTC album. This is the album that everyone forgets about, but yet it is very important to their catalog and their history. It is the last album that had 3 vocalists on it, singing lead on certain songs. And it's also the last to feature Barry Andrews, who moved on to the League of Gentlemen. He did his own solo work, and of course he went on to form Shriekback with Dave Allen from Gang of Four, which is awesome. Shriekback is awesome. If you don't know Shriekback, I give you one track. You just listen to this one track, and they've got plenty of great tracks, but Fish Below the Ice is just awesome. If you know, or if you've heard his voice with the other, like the XTC stuff, if you heard it anywhere else, he has a very distinctive voice. It's not for everybody, but I like it. I like the songs that he did with XTC. Another thing about XTC, Colin Moulding always has one track on every album where his bass playing and his songwriting, but definitely his bass playing, will be off the charts. And that is definitely super tough. That is hands down his greatest bass line on that album. Like I said, every single album he's got these bass lines, you're like, what? Like, of course, you've got Mayor of Simpleton on Oranges and Lemons. He's got a bunch of great bass lines on that album. I was listening to Skylarking earlier today. His bass lines on, like, That's Really Super, Super Girl. I mean, his bass lines are great on there. It's hard to believe that he had a meltdown or was fighting with Todd Rundgren and Andy Partridge during the recording of Earn Enough for Us. And he actually quit during the recording of that song, and he never really officially came back to the band. He just kind of came back after he was angry, and he went somewhere to cool off, and he came back, and it was never talked about again. But he did say, I quit this band, and he left, which is kind of interesting. Speaking of that, with Go2, there were a lot of tensions going on during the recording of this album. Terry Chambers had experimented with mushrooms and was freaking out, and he was afraid of, he didn't want to be around Barry Andrews anymore because of that. But at the same time, when Barry quit XTC, Andy, who fought with him the most, actually was the most depressed about him leaving, because he was the only person that he could really have discussions with. Apparently, Colin Moulding is, and you can kind of tell just by looking at him, but Colin Moulding he's the quiet one. He's very quiet, and you would think the same about Dave Gregory, but he does have things to say, and he will say those things. But Colin Moulding is actually, according to Andy Partridge, he's very quiet and he won't talk a lot. And the same thing goes for Terry Chambers. He doesn't like to talk much either. He's a very silent type, which I gathered that. And I don't know if I told you guys this, but I saw Terry Chambers a few months ago. My wife and I went to see him here in Atlanta, and he was with a band. It's called XTC, spelled EXTC, which was funny because the lady who introduced them, she just wasn't thinking, and she's like, EXTC, and we just started laughing. So it was good to see him playing those songs, even though the rest of the band wasn't with him. So, you know, of course, no Andy, no Dave, no Colin with him. And of course, no Barry Andrews with him either. But it was just him and two other guys. And so it was a three-piece act, and they went through a bunch of XTC songs. But it was really cool to finally actually see someone from XTC play. And really, he's my favorite drummer anyway, so it was great to finally get to see him live. I did get some footage from that show as well, but I wanted to enjoy the show. I always do some filming at those shows just to kind of retain those memories a little bit. Someone had written in and he mentioned Beatown, which I had just spoken about earlier. I love Beatown. That's a great one. They went from this to Drums and Wires, which is behind me here on the wall. And I mean, Drums and Wires obviously is the better album, but this album really goes unnoticed. Like, I almost missed this album because I didn't know that it was an XTC album. You just see this large body of words here. You don't really know that it's XTC until you look at the side and you see it says Go2. And I thought maybe that it wasn't an actual album, but it's the real deal. It's got this cool little map of Swindon here that I believe Colin Moulding drew that. Well, let me get my glasses. See if I can see what it says here. It might not, still, it's very, very small, fine print. Can't see it. So, anyway, there's a map of Swindon in here, which is where XTC hails from. This album really grows on you like a fungus. I'm a big fan of Life is Good in the Greenhouse. I absolutely love that track. Andy has some very funny stories about Battery Brides because it goes on forever. This track starts off, it's almost like they slowly started to speed up the tape because it sounds like it's starting off in E and A, but it basically rides on G and C for God knows how long. Normally I know these things right offhand. I know exactly how many minutes and seconds, but it does this for a very, very long time. Battery Brides, oh, you. Anyway, so it does that for a while. You know, it's one of those songs where the first few times that I heard it, I wanted to skip it, but I couldn't. Like, I should probably skip this because it's annoying how long it takes to start like going somewhere else, but I can't do it. It's weird. Barry does some really cool things with the, while they're just going, he's doing this thing like, you know, he's doing some really cool stuff, and I would love to demonstrate for you, but my keyboard playing is super, super rusty unless I like warm up for an hour, and I don't have time to do that. Anyway, so Battery Brides is another song that really does grow on you. Once again, case in point about this album, every track is just like, I don't know, it just kind of grows on you in this way, this weird kind of way, the whole entire album from start to finish. And then it's over and you're like, oh gosh, I want to listen to that again. And then you just start with Mechanic Dancing all over again and enjoy yourself. It's one of those three-peats, you know? It's one of those albums that I'll listen to at least 3 times before I move on to listening to something else. Then there's Buzzcity Talking, which kind of has the same feel. All of these songs really kind of blend into one another quite nicely. So that one is just... So that one's another weird one. That's a Colin Moulding track. And I want to say that's the first that you hear out of Colin Moulding on this album. From Buzzcity Talking, it rolls into Crowded Room, another Colin Moulding track. So you feel like there's going to be a theme here where Andy gets 2 and then Colin gets 2, but it doesn't quite go that way. Either way, this is like hands down probably one of the heaviest XTC songs ever. It's got this, so it starts off with this kind of a polka. first time I ever heard it, I said, oh my God, Nirvana, it was totally ripping these guys off. It's like the blueprint for About a Girl. And a lot of those Nirvana songs were they're just riffing. And Mom and Dad went to show, I'm singing that wrong. Drop me off, wait. Kick and scream, said please don't go. You know, a lot of the Nirvana incesticide stuff, even though some of the songs that are on there are definitely covers, like Turn Around and Molly's Lips, and I think there's some other ones, but they have covers on there, but there's just something about the attitude on Incesticide that totally points back to XTC's Go2. The first hint that you get of it is Big Cheese on Bleach. So when you hear Big Cheese, there's a part in there where he screams, and it almost completely matches up with Respectable Street, which is actually on Black Sea. So they were fans. Nirvana, they were totally fans of XTC. Kurt Cobain was a fan of XTC. It's without a doubt. But for whatever reason, this song, Sliver, it just has this feel, and it reminds me of Crowded Room so much. And even though it has a different way of starting, it's like a... Mom and Dad went to the show. They dropped me off at Grandpa Joe's. I kicked and screamed, said please don't go. And then that chorus is so awesome. Chris on that chorus is like a... Grandma, take me home. Anyway, hope you understand and get my point. I mean, Nirvana sounds like XTC. Just proves my point once again that XTC, they're just at the forefront of so much, really. And sure, they show their influences. You hear, especially as things go later on into their discography, you hear the Beach Boys in there, you hear the Beatles, you hear all that stuff. You hear a lot of those psychedelic bands. Sure, yes, absolutely. You hear their influences as well. But you definitely hear a lot of bands today who are influenced by XTC. Also, there's this thing that Andy loves to do with the guitar. And I see this out of so many bands today, where they'll get on these riffs and they'll just be like, it doesn't sound right with the bass. The way Andy would attack some of those chords, I hear it in Arctic Monkeys, I hear it, Modest Mouse, totally hear that. You hear the XTC influence in Modest Mouse all day long. The Dismemberment Plan as well. So anyway, yeah, Crowded Room is, to me, the blueprint for a lot of like grunge punk type stuff, for sure. As I was saying, you think that Andy's gonna get 2 and Colin is gonna get 2. But no, Colin gets 3 in a row. I have to think about this for a minute, and I'm probably gonna have to stand corrected later on, but I can't think of any other XTC releases where Colin gets 3 songs in a row. Colin Moulding really, honestly, on this album, he doesn't have any bad tracks on this one. I like everything he does on here. Even the tracks that you don't quite know if you are really into them, they grow on you. And we'll talk about that in a couple more tracks here. So after that track, it's time for Andy to step back up again, and it's with their lead single off of this album, I'm pretty sure, Are You Receiving Me? You know, it's a pretty good, straightforward rockin' tune. You know, it's kind of got that punk feel to it. And yeah, I mean, everyone knows Are You Receiving Me if you're an XTC fan. Another song that just, it's pleasing. It's not a skipper, you know, it's not a song that you skip. Just because it has that single kind of feel to it. It's not my favorite track on the album, but I'm not against it either. Like, I like it, I can listen to it, but it's not something I'm like anxious to hear as I'm listening through the album. I'm not like anxious to get to that one. But, you know, there are a lot of people who beg to differ with that. Now, Red. This one honestly could have been on I just can't stop it by the beat, the English beat. So because I started listening to the English beat before XTC, as soon as I heard Red, I thought about Noise in This World, which is the bass line for that song. This is the English beat now. This one I never even tried to play it, but it's a very cool bass line. The bass playing on all that English beat stuff, Madness, you name it, it's all great stuff. I highly recommend it. If you really care about like digging into some very melodic and busy bass lines, check out a lot of that new wave or that British ska, second wave ska stuff. It's excellent. So what reminds me, the thing about XTC in this song, the saxophone, it's like hearing that saxophone in the background, the way it's going with it. I really wish I could play it for you, but I just can't take the chance. I would love for you to hear it. Check out Noise in This World from the English beat, and then listen to Red by XTC. You will totally hear what I'm talking about. They are very similar. You just got that crazy horn work going, and it just starts off, it's just really moving. It's excellent. Let's have a little experiment. Anyway, Beatown is actually one of my favorites on here, even though I didn't list that in my post. And the end of it will totally wear you out because you're just like... Anyway, after doing that for a while, your fretting hand will be, it's a good workout, let's put it that way. So you hear Andy all the way up until My Weapon by Barry Andrews, and then he comes with Super Tough, which is, I love Super Tough, okay? So you've got Super Tough, and then you don't hear from Colin again until the very last track, I Am the Audience, which is an excellent track. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So you get those 3 in a row from Colin, so he gets 4 tracks on this album. Barry gets 2. He actually had more, but Andy kept fighting him, so he ended up using those on his solo record. So Barry gets 2, and then Andy gets the rest. So 4 of those tracks belong to Colin Moulding, and 2 of them belong to Barry Andrews. Just keep it like that. So 6 tracks, and the rest of it is Andy Partridge. So Andy gets the other 7. Let me talk about Beatown a little bit. It's not as heavy as Crowded Room with the riffing, but it's got that... It does this forever. To the point to where you're like, okay, this is gonna be the whole song. And then all of a sudden, and just Andy's got it's cool. It starts, once he starts singing and it rips in, it's like really got a lot of power to it. And it's definitely, it's a pit-worthy song, let's put it that way. This is where everything slows down. It's another one of those tracks that keeps droning on. 1 second. With Life in the Greenhouse, it's kind of like, it just slows down to the point to where, dare I say that this is one of those songs where you almost don't want to be in your right mind when you're listening to it. And even if you are stone cold sober, it will take your sobriety away. It's just one of those songs, you really kind of sink into it. And then from there, you have Andy's final track on this album. I kind of feel like INXS got their idea for jumping from Jumping in Gomorrah, because it's got that real kind of happy, kind of upbeat feel to it. Another crowd pleaser, I'm sure, at a live show. And then we move on to My Weapon, which I'm pretty sure it got XTC a lot of hate mail because the lyrical content. So he was not happy with Barry for that reason. And of course, then there's Super Tough, which is another one that, once again, I definitely, it's my number 2 on the album after Mechanic Dancing, for sure. And then I Am the Audience. So that is Go2. I highly recommend that you check it out. Towards the end of Barry's tenure with XTC, and when he was like, I'm done, he started doing weird stuff on stage. Apparently, like, he wouldn't even play his keyboard for an entire set, and he would just play saxophone throughout the set, which of course really irritated Andy. Andy wasn't very thrilled about Barry playing saxophone over the intro of Red. He didn't like that at all. But anyway, yeah, there was a lot of fighting going on when they were recording this album, but it still turned out good. You know, it's just like Pink Floyd. They're talking about how the funny thing about Wish You Were Here is none of them wished that they were there. But either way, sometimes that's what brings out your best work when you're having fights. I can recall coming close to getting into a fist fight with bandmates before going on stage, and those being some of the best shows I've ever played. It's also been a double-edged sword. I've had fights with bandmates and been feuding with them, and I go in to record or do a performance and I can't do anything because I'm so angry. So there's definitely like a certain point that you can push yourself. Ultimately, it's not good for anybody. It's not good to be fighting. It's never good to be feuding. It's amazing that so much amazing music has come out of so much chaos and turmoil, because anybody you can think of, especially XTC, they went through so much stress throughout many of their recordings, especially Skylarking. But this is about, I'm straying from my point, this is about Go2. I was gonna just put this little thing at the end of another video and talk about gear, but I'm gonna have to let it be its own separate video. I wanted to mention this because I've been letting so many of these milestones get away from me, and I haven't been able to make videos for them because I've been so busy. I'm gonna have another video out to you guys soon. We'll be celebrating more milestones as they're coming up here. I had worked on one for the Police, who I think are also strongly influenced by XTC, with Ghost in the Machine and Zenyatta Mandata, or other way around. But the video kind of got messed up, so maybe next year I'll do it again.